Hey, my name is Cullen. I beat the often path by starting DoneGood. Forbes called DoneGood the Amazon for social good. We're a shopping site where you can buy all sorts of stuff, but every company that sells on our site pays good wages, uses eco-friendly practices, makes the world better, so you know that the money you're spending is always doing good for people on the planet.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we celebrate unique companies and individuals, the kind of people you might not have heard about before, to help us think outside the box in our lives and careers. Today, I'm joined by Cullen Schwarz, the co-founder of DoneGood, an e-commerce platform that is like a more ethical version of Amazon. They only work with vendors who have vetted their supply chains and who offer quality products that are better for the planet and for their customers. They only work with companies who are committed to human rights, fair wages, worker empowerment, and the protection of wildlife and the environment. So awesome stuff. Cullen is an alumnus of the Harvard Innovation Lab, and his B Corp is a Best in the World award winner for excellent social and environmental impact. We talk today about how he left behind a profitable career in big league politics to pursue what really mattered to him and to lead a more authentic life. So here is the inspiring tale of Cullen Schwarz of DoneGood. Well, that's a fabulous intro. So, politics, where it all began.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with anything you just said.
Well,
what do we know about politics? What do we feel about it?
Yeah,
You have an extensive background in politics.
So many feelings about politics, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
I mean, they are related to a degree, right? Like, I mean, I got into that line of work because I cared about fighting climate change. I cared about economic equality and human rights and women's rights and, racial equity and those issues. And you think, okay, well, let's go fight for those things in the political arena, right? And
So
look,
basically, you're an idiot is what you're saying, right?
What, that I was an idiot? Is that what you said?
Basically, you're an idiot, right? Because only a moron would care about those things, right?
Yeah, right.
This is a super conservative show, by the way.
Yeah,
No,
right.
not at all. I'm just
Exactly.
kidding. No, I completely agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So, well, right. So, but then, look, like I said, I think public policy is important. Elections matter. I still hope everyone votes, I mean, as much as it's still important, right? Look at, I mean, Trump beats Hillary, 3 Supreme Court picks, and, things change, right? So I still think that is important. But I also found, like, working down there in Congress in particular, a lot of gridlock. We'd work for years to finally get some legislation passed, and it would make one area of federal policy a little less shitty. You know what I mean? Like, you're making things a little less bad. And wondering, that was years of my life. I mean, you do find, a lot of times you're fighting the other side to an endless tie. And again, I think that's all important. But I came to believe that there's another avenue for change that I believe in more, and that's using consumer spending to make the world better, right? Like, we Americans in total gave $475 billion to charity last year, but we spent over 300 times more than that buying stuff, right? And so if just even a fraction of our spending can fight climate change, reduce poverty, make a positive impact in the world, help create the kind of world we want to see, that's huge. That's a huge impact. And a fraction of our spending can quickly match all the money that's going to all the nonprofits and all the good in the world that every single charity is doing, right? And so, again, I think public policy is important. People should vote. I think nonprofits, I hope the number goes up. I hope people donate more. There's, mixed bag with all the nonprofits, but like a lot of really great organizations doing great work in the world. But if we're not paying attention to this huge mountain of resources that is consumer spending, then we're missing a huge opportunity. I think the most powerful opportunity to shape the world. If you want to change the world, really, you change business behavior, right? And if you want to change business behavior, you change consumer behavior, right? Who we give our money to. Businesses will chase our money, right? And as consumer demand changes, business behavior changes. You want to solve climate change? Like, yeah, the Paris Accord, but we don't need the Paris Accord once businesses start reducing their carbon footprint. We'll hit those goals anyway. And so I think rather than having, faith that Washington is going to solve a big problem like climate change, I mean, they ain't, right? However, because consumers, that's already happening, because consumer sentiment is shifting and more people are thinking about the impact of their purchases, who they're giving their money to. Business behavior is already starting to change. We just need to accelerate the pace of that change, right? And so every time that we choose to give our money to a business that is super sustainable, paying living wages, we help those kind of businesses succeed. More people want to start businesses like that. And eventually, even the big guys start to see this shift in consumer spending. They start to shift their behavior too. I really think that is the hope. That's the hope for humanity. Yep. And that's how we really make an impact. I mean, we should vote and march and post on social media and volunteer and donate and do all the things. But if we're doing all that stuff and then we're giving all our consumer spending to businesses that are working against us, wow, what the hell are we doing?
And we've talked on the show a lot about single-use plastics. Obviously, some governments are beginning to outlaw single-use plastic, seeing the waste that comes from those mega factories producing bottles and bottles of this garbage.
Yep.
Horrible, but I think of Amazon as maybe not single-use plastic, but maybe double-use plastic. Things that get 2 or 3 uses and then they break. Things that are designed to be crappy.
Totally.
I bought a dust buster from Black & Decker. God knows what the brand has become. I think we can all guess.
Well, Black & Decker's not
maybe
even a real
clean
brand.
My couch
Black & Decker
4
just,
times.
They don't even make anything anymore. It's strictly a licensing organization where they put their name on shit that other people make. So,
well, I'm not surprised because I buy this thing, I clean my couch 3 times with it, and just dies.
Of course.
And you can see when you pull this thing out of the box that the wiring used to charge it is the literal thinnest possible wire that could ever be used. You know it's crap. Every piece of it feels like crap and it breaks.
Yep. Well, and they're cutting corners at every level, right? Like, so they're making the thing as cheaply as possible. That means like the thing itself is really low quality and it's going to break. And so then, it's like you got a real good deal in it. Oh, it was only $8 or whatever, ridiculously low price. Yeah, and you used it 3 times, and so you keep buying another one, and it ends up not being that cheap anyway, right? But they're also, of course, I mean, they're not paying workers well. Whoever made that is making a poverty wage. When you see this stuff that is bargain basement prices, there's either poverty wages behind it, or worse, I mean, slavery is still a thing. Slavery is still we call it human trafficking now, right? But like, let's call it what it is. It's modern day slavery. It's still a $150 billion a year industry worldwide. There's more slaves on the planet now than at the height of the African slave trade. And if you use a site, slaveryfootprint.org, you can actually enter in what kind of stuff you've bought over the last couple of years, and they'll tell you, oh, here's how many slaves you've had working for you. On average,
Wow.
And so then the average American has dozens, if not, well above 100, couple hundred. I mean, I'm the founder of DoneGood, and through like buying less and, buying secondhand, or of course, like buying stuff on DoneGood or from other, ethical, sustainable companies that don't have slavery and poverty wages in their supply chain, I've been able to get my number down to 10. And that's really good. And think about that, like, oh, it's, a great score. I've done a great job by changing my buying habits to get my number to 10, right? So, I mean, that's all this stuff comes at a cost. I mean, they're doing it as cheaply as possible. And so that's the real problem with Amazon. I mean, it is multifold, right? One, Amazon treats their workers terribly. You see all this stuff about all these injuries and people not being able to go to the bathroom, drivers peeing in bottles and stuff like this. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is flying a penis-shaped rocket into space or whatever. They're not paying taxes. They're running small businesses off the face of the earth. So there's Amazon, the company, but then there's all the companies selling on Amazon. What do we know about them? What fly-by-night outfit operating with what kind of supply chains, And so, doing what to the planet. So, there's negative impact at a lot of levels. But so that's why, to the extent we can be an alternative, I mean, look, we've got over 100 brands on our site. We're working to keep adding brands all the time. We don't have anywhere near the selection Amazon does. We can't do the 24-hour free shipping like they can, you know what I mean? But all that stuff comes at a cost. And so, but we hope that we can be an alternative even for a lot of purchases, you know what I mean? Even if once in a while people still have to buy on Amazon, we get it. Sometimes, you need that thing that you can only find there, and you do need it 24 hours later. You lost your computer charger. I can't work until I get that. Yeah, okay, you got to order that on Amazon. We don't have that on DoneGood. But for a lot of the basic stuff, we hope we can be an alternative. So then like I said, even a fraction of our consumer spending helping to with fight climate change and empower people and pay living wages and point the world to a new way of doing business. Yeah, that's huge. That makes an impact.
That is huge. And going back to the other point that surely every listener will want us to gloss over and quickly put behind us. If I never gave a shit about anything that I ever bought, I never cared about anything ethical or globally minded or eco-friendly, how many slaves would that number be? Maybe 100?
Well, it depends.
More?
It depends how much stuff you buy then. You know what I mean? That's a big part.
Everything I see.
Everything you see.
I buy everything in the Sharper Image catalog. I buy everything in the airplane.
Hundreds. You'd probably be in the hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And 10 is a realistic
10. Well,
I mean, that's a sobering truth.
10 is like, I work really hard to buy less, buy secondhand, or buy on DoneGood,
right,
or otherwise something that I know is ethical, sustainable. Mm-hmm. 10 is like, I mean, you're doing pretty well, I think. Like, I'm like, man, I've really worked to have got that number low. Yeah.
Incredibly sobering.
Yeah. No, it is. And it's also, people ask us, what big companies should we avoid? Now, the problem is, I mean, just to understand this stuff, like, it's not like a executive at H&M is like, hey, let's use slavery. Hey, let's use child labor. It's that they're so big. These systems are so massive. They don't know what's in their supply chain, right? There is no H&M factory. They just subcontract to another company that produces the stuff, and they subcontract to a mill who subcontracts from a cotton farm. Meanwhile, a subcontract to make the buttons and the zippers, and that goes all the way back to the mines and that mine the metal for the zippers, whatever. And so if you have to crank out billions of articles of clothing a year, then you're going to subcontract with so many companies and they're going to subcontract with so many. You just have no idea what's in the supply chain. So, like, what big companies have slavery in their supply chain? Like, well, all of them somewhere. That's the thing, right? So if you bought one H&M thing, is that made by, a victim of human trafficking? Who knows? You don't know. But that's the problem. You don't know. And so that's where, if we can provide sort of that safe haven site where people can know, like, okay, look, here we know for sure that we're not supporting stuff like that, then, we hope that can help.
Well, I think it's a fabulous initiative. And I think we could call it the Amazonification of products or the continual cheapening. We've gotten used to a cheaper and cheaper standard of products. We've gotten used to things that just break. I've ordered a number of things in the last few years that broke after one or two uses, just pieces of crap. But it's interesting because a friend of mine, he is in Hollywood and he does film, and he buys some very expensive gear for film and lighting. And sometimes I'll see these products, and it's a reminder of what a quality-made product can be. Now, granted, it'll cost $1,000, but you say, oh, that's a nice bag. That's clearly not going to fall apart, or that's a nice wire. And then you realize we've gotten accustomed to such a low standard of the products in our lives, and we've got so much e-waste. And I think it was a gradual shift. Obviously, it wasn't overnight that we went from things that could last 50 years to things that last 5 minutes, but when you see the contrast between a well-made product and a cheap product, it's just getting more and more extreme, I feel.
Totally. It's a race to the bottom on quality and on price, right? Because then they want to make it cheaper. They want to win the battle on the low price. But yeah, like you said, with your dustbuster or whatever, like, what are you really getting for your money? And I'll say straight up, like, some of the stuff on DoneGood I think is pretty price competitive. And as the sort of business as a force for good movement, the sustainable business movement continues to grow and mature, I think, like, it becomes more and more price competitive. But look, a lot of times the stuff on our site is more expensive, and we don't set the prices. We're the marketplace. We screen all the partner brands that sell on our site. They set the prices, and they're always the exact same as they are on their site, but still, they're sometimes more. But that's part of one, they're more because when you pay people a good wage instead of poverty wages, you're not using human trafficking, you're not killing the planet. It costs more for the product to produce, the product, so it's going to be somewhat more. But also, that's the other thing, right? Like, the quality, stuff that's handmade by someone who's paid well tends to be way better quality than stuff that's mass produced by some giant mega corporation who's trying to make stuff cheap so that it'll break down and we have to buy more of it. Right. And so ultimately, when you say, I got that really great product for $20, but you have to buy another one every 6 months or every year, Or you get something that's, $70, but it was bought thoughtfully, consciously from a company that's making something good. You know that you'll love it. You know that it'll last a long time. And you know that, you'll keep it for 5 to 10 years. So if you bought a $20 thing every year, or you bought a $70 thing that you keep for 5 or 10 years, the $70 thing is a better value for you in the long run. And of course, it's better for the world. And it gets into then, when we're buying thoughtfully like that, maybe we're not buying as much too. How many shirts do we need in the closet, right? Like maybe if we had, X number of really good, like $70 ones that we really like versus a million of these $20 ones, then we end up never wearing, and they like you said, they break down and really quickly, and we end up trashing most of the stuff anyway. Then we just stay on that consumption wheel, and that's where they want us, right? They want us on that overconsumption wheel, and so that's we don't want that, right? We want people to buy thoughtfully. We don't want people to buy stuff they don't need. We don't want to just push more junk out into the world, right? But to the extent people are buying things, we want to make it easy for them to, shift that money away from these, negative systems that aren't good for the world and to more positive systems.
You recognize that there are problems, as many of us do, and you set out to change this. You wanted to create DoneGood. A lot of people are at this point where they want to do something. They don't know how. They don't know what's going to be the most effective use of their time. When you began this project, what were some of the first steps that you took to bring this into reality?
Oh, boy. Well, we had a good opportunity. We got, just with the idea, we got accepted into the Harvard Innovation Lab, the business incubator there. And so that was hugely helpful. Coming from politics, right? I didn't really know anything about the startup world. I mean, when I'm at the iLab towards the beginning, and, they have like workshops and, smart people telling you things, and I'm writing down like words to look up later. And I'm like, angel investor. Like, I don't know what angel investor means. You know what I mean? Right. So, I mean, that was really helpful. I do think, then we learned kind of the, the lean startup methodology, right? Like, talk to the people you're trying to serve first. Talk to potential who you think is your target customer. Do the old like lean canvas, if you've seen that. Startup. It's like on one piece of paper, 20 minutes. Kind of thinking through like, well, who's your target audience and what's your value proposition and all this, and just do it quick, right? Don't at the beginning, because you're gonna kind of your startup, your business is going to evolve. It should evolve as you go and as you learn. So instead of sitting down and writing, a 30-page business plan, do a lean canvas in 20 minutes on one piece of paper, then go talk to 10 people who you think are your target audience and ask them a bunch of questions about what really could make their lives better, right? Like what really would serve them well, what really is like a problem they're having that you will be solving, right? And then continuing just through that process, get your MVP, just that initial, most simple version of your product out, then get feedback on that from real people who are using it, right? And then iterate and evolve and continue to make it better, right? We actually started with an app in the greater Boston area where we were at the time for like local brick and mortar stores. It was more like a Yelp style app. And there was a variety of reasons why that was a really hard business model to crack. I mean, one was, we had over 1,200 businesses in the greater Boston area, but like, okay, I'm looking for restaurants. Okay, well, now we're down to some hundreds, right? Well, I want Italian food. I mean, okay, we got one. You know what I mean? Like quick, right? And it's like, well, yeah, and also that's, right. Way on the other side of town. Like, I'm not going to go there right now. Or it's a lot of times, right, that Yelp style use case, it's I'm in this part of town right now. Where can I find to eat around me? And it's, a young person who's on foot in a city, doesn't own a car, right? Or whatever. And we're like, oh, well, 6 miles away, we got a really sustainable place. Like, I got 20 minutes before my next work meeting. You know what I mean? And so that was one thing, was like online, we're asking people to move their mouse 4 inches instead of walk an extra 4 miles. And you get more buy-in. If the action, that you're asking people to take is lower, then, you get more buy-in. Another was the kind of businesses, so we didn't really have enough businesses. We're still asking people to walk 4 or 6 miles, but to get those 1,200 businesses on, we had to let businesses on that qualified for any one of our kind of DoneGood values, right? So we had like 8 different badges, and one of them is eco-friendly, and one of them is empowers workers, pays good wages. But another, there's various others, and one was just like women owned. One was locally owned, right? Well, just
Sure.
and we thought, well, we'll put the badges and people can make their choices. They'll see in what ways these things are doing good. Well, just because you're a women-owned business doesn't mean, frankly, you're doing anything great for the world. Or just because you're locally owned, we find like locally owned businesses and like, yeah, they're paying minimum wage and using styrofoam, and this isn't the kind of business we set out to achieve to support. We had one local florist say, hey, I hope you guys fail. He's locally owned. Oh, that's good. But yeah, he hopes we fail because he flies his flowers in from China every morning, and which is terrible environmental impact. And he has no idea the work conditions or what people are being paid to pick those flowers. So like, what are we really doing here, right? And so with online shopping, like I said, one, it's just about moving your mouse a few inches, but also then it's companies that serve the whole country. And so then we could work with, a couple hundred brands that were killing it on everything, like super eco-friendly, paying great wages, giving to good causes. You know what I mean? Like really the kind of businesses that we think are world changing and that's what we set out to support. You know what I mean? And we even did some research around like the shipping, but what about the environmental cost of like shipping products to your house versus shopping local? Well, it actually turns out in a lot of cases, shopping online is more sustainable because they say you get clothing at a local store, the clothes were still shipped to that store. But the biggest carbon emissions throughout the supply chain from that shirt going from like cotton to shirt to the store to you, the biggest single piece of carbon emissions is you driving your car to the local store, right? And so now if like you're buying local clothes and if like the cotton farm and the mill and the store were all in your town and you walked to the store to go get it, yeah, that would be more sustainable than online shopping. But like, that's rarely the case, right? And so it's actually more sustainable in a lot of cases to online shop. And especially on DoneGood, we actually pay to offset the carbon emissions of every order. So every shipment is always carbon neutral. So then it usually is more sustainable that way too. So that's why I guess to your initial question, what were some of the first steps you took? Well, we tried a model, also just scaling from like city to city, like doing now this city, now this city, now this city, this city. Super hard model to make work. So that's another thing we did. We tried a model. It didn't work very well. It didn't allow us to support like the really ethical and sustainable companies that we really wanted to. And so we continued to evolve. I mean, you make little evolutions within your business model, and then sometimes you realize this whole thing don't work. We gotta change the whole model and pivot completely. And so there's been some of that too.
Super cool. Do you feel that your personal cynicism was lessened once you started discovering some of these businesses that were truly outstanding? Did it make you feel a little more positive about the world in general to know that they're out there? And
yeah, I mean, my favorite thing, I mean, when we first started, there was only a couple of us. Like I used to get to talk to a lot of these business owners, and now we have a VP of partnerships who, she talks to a lot of the businesses. That's like, when I get to talk to other founders who founded the businesses that sell on DoneGood, that's like one of my favorite parts of the job. And I'm like, sad I don't get to do it as much as I used to, because they're like a self-selecting group of cool people. You know what I mean? Like they all have the same story. I quit my career and took a big risk to try to start a business that's doing good in the world. Right. And so like, yeah, they're cool. I mean, what kind of people could they be? You know what I mean? Right. And so they're really interesting, really kind, really nice. I mean, we're all working together. We're all on the same team. You know what I mean? Like, and so, I don't like, there's no sort of like tough negotiations or, you know what I mean? Like, I'll say, yeah, just my whole personal stress level. I mean, I don't know. In some ways your stress level goes up, right? I saw a post on social media at some point a while back that said, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And it had crossed out, never work a day in your life. And it said, do what you love and you'll work really effing hard and you'll care a lot and you'll take everything personally. And so that's, to some degree, the stress level is there. Like we're still trying to make the thing work. We've stayed alive for a few years, but we're trying to grow to like really have the kind of impact that we set out to achieve. What you want, right, is millions of people moving billions of dollars away from the big multinationals and to companies that are fighting climate change and reducing poverty. And so that's a struggle, and so there is some of that stress. But on the other hand, it's a more, the reduction of stress in like living an authentic, you know, sort of like I really believe in what I'm doing, and all the people I work with are really cool people because they believe in what we're doing, and all the partner brands we get to work with are really cool people. And instead of being a spokesman for politicians where I gotta like say negative things about the other candidate whose policies probably are deplorable, but I don't know, he's probably like a nice dad and grandpa, but I gotta like talk shit about him in the press all the time. You know what I mean? Like I don't like I don't have to wear a suit all the time. I mean, even that sort of little stuff, right? Like it's in that way like a lot of stress relief. But yeah, then I guess traded for the I really care about this and I really want this to work. This isn't just a job where like I don't know, right. I'll work like just enough not to get fired. It's like I you know, you care a lot, and so then you work super hard, and then you have to like, you know, talk to your therapist about restoring work-life balance before you kill yourself. You know what I mean?
So in 7 years, describe to me the overall impact you've been able to make if you have those figures handy. That's one. And two is, what are the life lessons that you have learned
Holy cow.
Since you started
life lessons? Then we get deep with that. Well, the first one, I mean, our impact really depends because it's the impact of all our partner brands, right? And they're all doing like different things in different ways. You know, Starfish Project Jewelry is helping women escape sex trafficking in Asia. They're giving those women living wage jobs making the jewelry, but then also providing them skills training so that they can graduate to professional careers to become, you know, teachers or entrepreneurs or photographers or whatever it is that they might want to pursue. That opens up more jobs for more women. And then the profits all fund their nonprofit wraparound services to help more women, right? So like that's one great example. And then there's, you know, just these super incredible eco-friendly brands that are producing in zero waste facilities or 100% renewable energy powered facilities. And things like that. So our impact is their impact. It varies widely. But what I can tell you is it's been over $2 million have been diverted from, you know, multinational companies that are keeping people locked in poverty and destroying the planet, and to companies that are paying living wages, empowering workers, fighting climate change, things like that. So, and then we can we do a year-end thing where we're like, okay, well, so like enough customers bought from Kyrgyz slippers to provide X number of hours of living wage work for women in Kyrgyzstan, or by buying from Highway Robbery and their zero waste facility, you know, you help save X amount of waste and things like that. But it's really specific to those brands. But for us, what's our overarching impact? Moving money away from systems that are bad for the earth and making the world worse, and to systems that are making it better. And so we've been able to, you know, help people move $2 million worth over 7 years, right? And so obviously that's what I mean about the stress of continuing to try to grow. I hope, you know, appreciate opportunities like this where we can reach other audiences, just tell more people we exist, you know? That's the double-edged sword of capitalism, right? You only have so much budget for marketing until you make more money, right? And so you keep trying to claw and scratch your way to grow bigger. So yeah, I know that's my initial answer on impact. Life lessons. I mean, yeah, I'll try to say something, you know, thoughtful and off message here, I guess, right? One, I mentioned like work-life balance. I do think no matter what you're doing, especially when you do something you believe in, well, I believe that consumer spending can be the world's most powerful force for change. I believe this is the movement of the 21st century. You know what I mean? Like, I believe this deeply, and I want to keep doing this. And so, like, you know, that creates some stress, and it creates the desire, well, if this is that important, I should be working on it all the time. And at some point, you realize, like, you know, you're going to kill yourself. And so there always has to be some balance. And I increasingly believe that, like, you know, operating from higher up on the consciousness ladder, right? Like when you're feeling energized, you tend to be more creative and thoughtful and a better leader and better to work with and help keep up everyone else's energy and make it a more pleasant place to work, as opposed to when you're stressed and worn out all the time, then you're further down on the consciousness ladder, right? And, you know, so I also think that actually, as I finally, you know, it was like year 6 when I started, you know, year 5.5, 6 when I finally started realizing, like, I needed to make a change personally. and restore some more balance. And that if as much as I believe in DoneGood, if it requires me to like severely underpay myself, which I was doing, and kill myself, then it's not working, right? Like, realities of capitalism, I need to make a decent wage, even if it's less than I used to make, but like, and I need to not kill myself. You know, I need to work a reasonable number of hours. And but like I said, I do think that has actually, I'm not any less productive and probably like more creative, and our team's energy and culture is better, you know? And so, I think that's a lesson. Another is, I think, really just the, like, how much authenticity matters. I mean, I think it's like, you know, I mean, I came from a world of political communications. I was a spokesperson for politicians. My whole life was writing a statement for a senator and then like parsing out the exact words that would sound the best or whatever. But then, you know, you realize as you're doing that like there's a reason why. And then I'd write something, and then, you know, the chief of staff would want to put in some words, and someone else would want to put in some words, and like, you know, and someone else would be like, well, remember the poll said blah, blah, blah. So you should fit the words middle class in there because the poll. And then all of a sudden you've got this statement that like doesn't sound like a thing a real human would say. And this is why people think politicians sound plastic, and why they think they sound full of shit, when actually I found like a lot of I thought my bosses like are good people who care about things, and the systems they work in are messed up. You know what I mean? Like, and make them have to raise a bunch of money from rich people to get elected. That's a reality. As long as big money is a thing and Citizens United is a thing, like, if you want to keep your job and win an election, you got to call rich people a lot and ask them for money, you know? And so these systems, like, you know, good people in weird systems, you know? And then another weird part of the system is, you got to write a statement. Well, you're writing it by committee, jamming language from polls, and then it sounds plastic and weird, you know? And so I just really think that, especially nowadays, like, our bullshit meter is on so high. We get bombarded with 1 million ad messages a day or whatever it is all over social media. And we're just so sick of it that, like, I mean, it really is like, I mean, that today, like, being real is the best marketing. You know what I mean? Like, really just saying something you think is true and that you believe in the way that you would normally say it. But that actually, like, I mean, that adherence to really just trying to be real and authentic and sincere, I like feel like it's absorbed even more into my personal life. You know what I mean? And just like really trying to have that as like a North Star. Like, I don't know, man, like no matter what you're doing, no matter what kind of conversation you have and what kind of relationship, like if you're just telling someone how you feel and what you think is true, almost nothing can ever go wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and they might not like it, but like, okay, then they can, if they tell you how they feel like, I don't know, then what's the worst case? I don't know, maybe you stop being friends because you feel differently, but I don't know, maybe you should, because I don't know, you feel differently. So maybe it's better, right? So like, I mean, it's just like, right. I mean, but you almost never do stop being friends. You stop being friends when it's like this argument or this fight or people trying to get what they want or jogging for position, when it's just sort of this, hey, this is what I feel and think is true in a very honest, authentic, sincere way. Those conversations almost always go well. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, man, I guess that's the other thing. Just like really trying to like, feel the authenticity, feel the sincerity and genuineness, like through and through, and really like live and breathe it as much as possible. I ain't perfect at it, you know what I mean? But I feel like throughout my time at DoneGood, I've become more that kind of person, which feels better.
Well, that is awesome. What a great sequence of things. I can think of no better way to wrap it up. I want to direct people to your website. It's donegood.co, DONEGOOD.
We do actually own the .com now too,
there,
so you can just say donegood.com. It does. We haven't
.com
revamped everything, so it's all on the .com. It's still all housed on the .co, but if you go to the .com, it redirects. So for public stuff now, if you're doing this in writing on social media or whatever, just use donegood.com now. You can use
All right, well, check it out. Pop in there, make some better shopping decisions, see the brands, see what they're up to, support them. I think it's a great cause. I wholeheartedly support what you're doing. I'm happy to spread your message in any tiny way.
Hey, real quick,
that
we didn't
I
talk
can,
about this, but sometimes I can do a discount code BTOP. So it's going to be BTOP is the code. That'll be $20 off if you buy $100 worth of stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
See, we're making money on this show.
Make this stuff more affordable.
Just like that.
You know, we only make a percentage of each sale. At that, we make very little on that, but it's still cool to, like I said, helps people make it more affordable, and it encourages people to actually like come to the website. Even people who think like, oh, I'm gonna go to that website. A lot of us, you know, we hear stuff, then we forget, we get busy. But when you give a discount code, it's like, oh, people that are like, okay, now I'm definitely gonna check that out, right? So that's cool. That's why those sorts of things work, right? That's why we do it, you know. Yeah. So BTOP, yeah, BTOP is the code. BTOP. Nice, and I need to remember to make it as soon as we get off the air here.
Great.
Yeah.
Those people flock into it and say, hey, that guy lied. No, I'm sure it'll work. It'll be great. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, Cullen. It's been an absolute pleasure. And with that, the official podcast recording is over.